Margaret Hirsch, and you're on the move with Margaret. And this is a podcast where I interview women who inspire me, and hopefully they will inspire you. Because as women, we go through life and we just chucked into this world and we just don't know what life is going to throw at us. And it throws the most amazing things at us, and we just have to cope. And I think that's what it's all about. How do you cope with those things? What do you do to make yourself get ahead in this world and to keep going, which is the most important thing? So today I've got my very best friend, Vanessa de Beer, with me, and we're in Portugal in her beautiful villa on the Algarve. And it's full of history. It was her father's, and you see the pictures behind from way back when, and it's just absolutely magnificent. It's a beautiful day here, and we are just having the best time ever. So Vanessa, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
And we're so happy to have you on here.
I'm so happy to be with you.
So Vanessa and I go back a long, long way. There are not many people who can say they've been friends for nearly 50 years. And it's a friendship that really stood the test of time, from when we were young girls to now we grannies and still living our best life. And I think that's what it's all about. How do you live your best life? But Vanessa, let's go way back when to when you were born.
Okay, well, my father was in the war in Burma and India, and he stopped at Cape Town on the way out and stopped at Cape Town on the way back to England and fell in love with Cape Town. Who doesn't? And then he went back to England, which was cold, grey, post-war, and decided Cape Town was the place. And so he moved to Cape Town, met my mother in Cape Town. I was obviously born there. And then he lived for 24 years in South Africa, moving to Vanderbijl Park. Sadly, my mum and dad got divorced, and I lived with my mum for quite a while, and then I lived with my dad. And then he, when I was 17, bought a villa in the Algarve, which I thought was absolutely amazing, because in those days the Algarve was very unexplored and not really discovered. And I thought I would be having wonderful holidays here. But I realized when I came to Portugal, it was very, very backward when I first came in the 1970s. It was very, the post wasn't delivered to your door. It was delivered down into the village to the pub where they had a shoebox, and everybody just would ruffle through the mail to find what was their mail. And then after that, I went to England for a while, and then I went back to South Africa and made my life there and had children there and grew them up. And that's where we are today.
Yeah, so that's where we are. So coming from a broken home, as parents, if we get a divorce or something like that, we feel so, and it's our fault. The child feels guilty. Tell us about going through a divorce with your parents where it was really difficult. Your mother had found somebody else. You were torn between your mother and your father. How did you cope with that as a person?
Well, that's quite an emotional thing, because I was 2 when my parents got divorced. So I probably didn't really realize that was happening. And I went to live with my mother and my grandmother in a 1-bedroom flat, which was very tiny. And my grandmother slept on this couch in the lounge, and my mother and I had the bedroom. My father had visitation rights, obviously. Every 2 weeks I would have to go with him. I would say the biggest advice that I could give to somebody if they're getting divorced or have gone through this is never ever to run the other partner down, because that causes huge issues with children. And my mother did that with me, so that I can remember crying, not wanting to go out with my father for the weekend. And then, because she made all sorts of accusations about it. And then when I came home, she did exactly the same thing. She would tell me that I'd got mosquito bites, or that I'd had a bruise, or I'd done something wrong, and I'd torn a dress or something like that. And so I associated with going with my father with being very unhappy. And yet when I was with him, I actually had a good time. And so I would definitely say to actually keep it as amicable as possible between the 2 adults, and then the child doesn't feel so threatened. My mother then did meet another man and went off with him when I was 9 and ran away with me, because she didn't want my father to take me away. And so I was basically, we went to Zimbabwe, which was Rhodesia then, on the back of milk cartons. I was being a missing child, and people looking for me all the time at school and everything. I hated every minute of that, because the police would arrive and then everybody in the classroom would say, "Why are the police here for you?" Which wasn't very pleasant. But, you build up resilience about it. That's the big thing, is to get resilience and to realize that you make your own destiny and not to let it affect you too much. And that's what I tried to do. And so when I reconnected with my father again when I was 14, I actually decided of my own free will to go and live with him. And so then I moved into his one-bedroom flat where he slept in the lounge on a divan and I had the bedroom. So I was quite spoiled back in the day.
It's quite a journey, and I think, it's so difficult when you're going through it. But when you look back on it, that's actually what shaped you and molded you to become the person you are today. And also when you had your own children, you knew exactly how to handle them and what they could put up with, and you didn't want them to go through the same thing.
Well, having gone to 9 different schools, I was determined that my children would only go to one school and we would be settled in one place. And that was Durban, and obviously that's where you came into my life. And that was a very important factor for me in bringing up my children, was to actually keep them grounded, have a good marriage, try and keep them, in one place that they could grow up. It's a little bit controversial because my son today really, really is so ingrained in the Western society that sometimes I think it would have been a good thing to actually move him around a bit. But there we are.
Yeah, as a parent, you don't get a rule book, so you just do the best that you can think of. And I know with my children, I also wanted them to be settled and to know that was their home and have a home and not move around and that type of thing. But sometimes it's good for them to experience all these different things. And when they have their children, they can bring them up how they think is best. And and we always think we're doing our best, and sometimes we just have to do our best under the circumstances. Now tell us about when you finished school and you went into home economics. What made you choose home economics of all different things?
Oh, well, when I went to live with my father, he said to me, you have to go to the convent because it's all day. And of course, there were lots of nuns in the school at that time. And I had a really great home economics teacher, Sister Ramunda. And I think I flourished under her. And it was domestic science back in the day, I think. And then I thought I'd become a secretary. And she really talked to my father and said, this is a waste, she's got a talent and whatever. And so then my father made me investigate home economics, and I decided I quite enjoyed that. So I became a home economics teacher. I went to Johannesburg Teachers Training College for Home Economics in Lade Street in Johannesburg, which I don't think exists anymore. And it was the start of my career, really, because I've been in food all my life.
And you love food, and I think it's so important to go into a career where you absolutely love what you do what you love, and you don't feel like you're working because you love every minute of it. How did you get your first job? Because I think that's a big thing. People today don't know how to get a first job. I was so lucky because my boss came to the school and said, I want a clever girl who is poor and has to go to work and come work for me. That's how I got my first job. How did you get your first job?
Well, my first job was very interesting because I was in England for 2 years, where I thought I could do my home economics training, but basically the jobs that back in the day that I was offered was promoting cigarettes in Tesco, and since I didn't smoke, that was quite an interesting sort of thought, but I didn't do that. I then met a friend of my aunt's, and she said, go to London with these friends, and they will give you a job as a travel agency, typing up the itineraries for people who are traveling. Back in the day, it was ICI was the company that owned it, and they had one person in the air every minute of the day. So it was a very busy travel agency. And then I really missed my career. Fortunately for me, during my training, I had worked for Nestle at the Rand Easter Show, and I had, as a student, and I was obviously running in the background, but they also let us do 1 or 2 demonstrations to sort of say that they were training us. And so they knew me, and that was a big thing. And I did have a friend who was working there, and they had basically one English home economist, one Afrikaans home economist, and the lead home economist. And my friend was the English home economist, and she decided to leave. and she knew I was coming back, and she put the word in for me at Nestle. So I stepped off the aeroplane from London and I walked straight into Nestle.
Oh, wow.
So that was my first job.
Oh, fantastic.
And I worked for them for about 3 years, I think it was, or 2 years before I got married. But by then I'd met a gentleman who worked at Tedelix called Brian Byrne, who my friend, my co-worker at, or my colleague at Home Economics College was working for him in Johannesburg. And he knew I was going to live in Durban, and he offered me the job to work at Tedelix in Durban, selling pressure cookers.
Oh, wow.
But it was also doing home economics, obviously doing lessons and going to women's institutes and church groups and showing them how pressure cookers work, because that was quite a thing in the day.
Yes.
And then, luckily for me, they also branched into slow cookers and food processors, but the big thing was they introduced a Litton microwave oven.
Yes, the good old little microwave oven, the first microwave oven that came into South Africa way back when, before Panasonic came in.
So they said to me, will you promote this machine? And I thought, well, I don't know anything about it. So I said, you better give me one, let me take it home and let me try it out. And my husband said to me, you're not going to cook anything for me in that thing. So I said, okay. So he was at work the one day and I was experimenting and I made a chocolate cake, which was his favorite. And it worked out really well. And he came home and I said, there's some chocolate cake. And he said, oh, this is delicious. I said, it was made in the microwave. He said, okay, you can make the chocolate cake from now on. So that's how we progressed. So Litton was the first sort of experimental stage of microwave ovens and cooking and, you know, getting into using the talents to obviously create recipes and devise ways of selling it, because that was the most important thing. And yes, I think I worked for Tedelix for 7 years, having a break to have my son. And then I left after I was pregnant with my daughter, and I was very fortunate to be quite well known in the industry then. And DeFi approached me actually when I just left Tedelix. They said they'd heard I left Tedelix. And I said, yes, but I'm about to have a baby. And they said, well, I'll phone you in 6 months' time. And 6 months to the day, they phoned me and said, come and work for us selling DeFi microwaves.
Yeah.
So then I met Romola Macken, my good friend, in some of the stores, and we were always vying against each other because National was flying out the doors. And of course, DeFi was a lot harder to sell against National and against Romola.
Yeah.
And then she said, I need to bring you into the Barlow's team.
Yeah.
So she actually introduced me into Barlow's, and that's how I started working for National.
Yeah.
And then, of course, having had quite a wide range of microwaves, I obviously met Margaret and Alan Hirsch, which was my lucky day.
So there we go. So those are the old days when National Microwaves first came out, and we started with National Microwaves. Vanessa started before me with Litton, but I started with National. And then we decided that the only way we could sell these ovens is to teach people how to use them, because nobody in those days knew what they were or how to use them. So I was very lucky that Panasonic sent me to Japan to learn how to use them, and Vanessa was experimenting here. And we started our first independent microwave cookery school in South Africa way back, I think it was about 1982.
Yep.
And we started, we bought our shop was downstairs, the upstairs was a flat, which we turned into a cookery school. And we grew it until at one stage I had 5 cookery schools, and sometimes I was doing up to 23 lessons a week. And that's why I needed Vanessa to help me. And we got our friend Cheryl Willard, and it just sort of progressed from there. And that's how we started the cookery schools, which we ran very successfully. And even when Vanessa left, we went to work with the meat board and that. But I carried on right up until 1994. But as you all know, we still cook in our stores every single day. So Vanessa, tell us about your transition then into the meat board.
Well, I think what was very interesting for me was, first of all, back in the early days, it was very easy to sell 50 microwaves a day.
Yeah.
It sounds ridiculous today, but that was the trend. People were queuing up to buy them, and really and truly, it just took off. And so in our Hirsch days, we used to have, as you say, many cookery lessons a week, and there were 70 or 80 people queuing up at the door. I think also, just to regress a little bit, we started giving up sheets of paper that were photocopied or rodeoed or whatever. And we realized that wasn't going to be very economically viable. So we sort of wrote a little book based on our lessons, which went on for years. And people still today say, oh, I've still got this recipe from this original book, which was amazing. But then, to be honest, I think we were getting into second generation microwave owners, or, children that had grown up with parents who'd had the microwave, gone to the lessons, were buying their own, and they knew what to do. So the lessons were beginning to tail off. And I worked with a colleague in the cookery school who actually didn't have a qualification, but she was very good with what she did, with the people, with the lessons, Cheryl Willett. And then I thought, to be honest, Margaret will never get rid of me. She'll always give me a job in sales, because I could see it was petering off. But I really didn't want to be totally in sales, because I still had a love of food. And also I had a boy, a son that played cricket, and I wanted to watch his cricket matches. And I knew that I'd have to toe the line and be in the store far more frequently. And so I was offered a job at the meat board, because the home economist there was leaving and going to another company. And so what I thought I knew about meat in my home economics experience, when I joined the meat board, I realized I knew very little because I had to go to Pretoria for 2 months and learn how to actually cut up all the animals and how to cook them. And obviously I learned a lot working there for 2 months in Pretoria. And then coming back to Durban and opening a new cookery school there for the meat board. And so it was a very diverse job, and it was a very interesting job, but I still kept my ties with Hirsch's because I'd come back and do lessons and everything there.
So Vanessa, how important do you think food is in people's lives when you think about it?
I think it's actually probably one of the most important things, because everything revolves around food or drink. And so if you think of meeting up with a friend, it's for a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or a drink, glass of wine, and that's socializing. And we are social animals, and it's really nice to be able to produce something if you're having friends around for a meal, or even if it's just a slice of cake or it's a biscuit, that it's something that's got some thought has gone into it, and that you are offering something that bonds people together. And whether you talk about the recipe or not, it doesn't matter. The fact is that you are actually just bonding with people, and everything in life revolves around eating and drinking.
Absolutely. And it's they say families that eat together stay together.
Yes.
And I think that's so important as well, to cook together, to stay together, to eat together. And so important that today that it's healthy food, because there's so much unhealthy food.
Sure.
What do most people do? You go to a fast food place, you pick up something, it fills your stomach for 5 minutes, and it's really not healthy. So I think if we can just teach people to cook healthy, eat healthy, they'll be healthy. It's very simple. But now tell us, so everything was going on swimmingly, your children grew up, and we sort of really fast forwarding here. And then one day your father phoned you and he said to you, I'm here in Portugal, you tell the story and come and join me.
Well, my father at that stage, he'd been a single since he divorced my mother, and he'd lived in Portugal there for about 40 years. And he was 87 at the time, and he said, Vanessa, you're the only child, I'm not going to live long, you're going to inherit this house one day, and in Portugal, and I think you need to, make a thought of coming and living here. And I spoke to my husband, and we decided we would take the plunge. My daughter was going to work for a while in England and try and get a British passport. My son was decided to stay on in South Africa. And so we decided to make this plunge, which was really not thought through very well, except that I knew that I had a home here to come to, and I knew I had electricity and water, a roof over my head, and that was about it.
Yeah. Now, for me, and I've just changed countries recently, and it really was very traumatic. You leave your friends behind, you leave your family behind, you leave everything behind, you start fresh. It has its pros and its cons. For you, what was the biggest change moving to Portugal?
Well, the language,
Yeah.
for number one, because we didn't speak Portuguese. I had visited before, so I knew what we were coming to. However, we didn't come with a plan of a job in mind, because we just arrived. And we did think of various things, but everything was sort of taken already or done. I actually was just sort of couldn't think of what to do really. And I think also, like you say, you leave your friends behind, you leave your family behind. I think what did help me a lot was we did bring a container with our furniture, so that made us feel a little bit more at home. The vegetation in Portugal, well, especially in the Algarve, is very like Cape Town. So the actual garden made me feel quite at home. But there's no animals to speak of. A bit of a few deer and a few lynx and sort of that sort of thing. But I do think that it takes a good 5 years to settle.
Oh, absolutely, it does. So when you came, you didn't have a job to come to, and you had to go and look for a job. Now, to me, that's the worst thing, to go and look for a job. If you had to say, what is the greatest thing that happened in my life, is when I got to America and I got my certificate and my license to be a realtor, I was offered a whole lot of jobs. But I think to go out and actually look for a job, especially when you're in a strange place, you don't speak the language, how did you overcome that?
Well, I decided that the only way forward was to actually work for myself, or to do something for myself. So it was what to do. I think also the other big contributing factor is that you don't know the legislation in the country really. You don't know how everything works. You haven't got a network of people to call on. So I can't phone you up, Margaret, and say, Margaret, I'm really desperate, I'd like a job, because there isn't a Margaret in the country that I know. So I think the first thing that I decided is I needed to network a little bit. And I joined a businesswoman's club that was met once a month. And so I sort of listened to what other people were doing. And that was quite helpful. A lot of them obviously were not in my field. There were beauticians, and there were people who ran newspapers, and there were people who did garden services. And then I met a woman who baked cakes, and she had various women around baking cakes for her, which she sold to actually very smart supermarkets and cafes and restaurants and that. And so I asked her if I could actually bake for her. And that was the first sort of stepping stone. But I also joined a book club, which I'm still a member of 20 odd years later. And in fact, now I joined 2 book clubs. And that also widens your circle of friends. You're not going to get your same old friends back, but you can then start another little community.
So you went back to your love of food to get your job, because you loved food, you could cook, you knew you baked beautifully. And so that was what you did to actually get money in. So it just goes to show, girls, I always say God gives you 2 hands in your brain. That's all you need. From there, you just take over and you find someone to help you. So you were cooking, you were baking. And then what happened after that?
So just go back. So I was baking and being paid quite a pittance really for baking all these cakes. 58 cakes a week, which was quite something. And in the heat of summer, it wasn't so fun getting up at 3 a.m. to do this. But anyway, I did it. But also I had to use all my own equipment, fridges and freezers and stuff. And I realized that I was putting all this my food and around a lemon meringue pie and all sorts of things, trying to juggle the fridge space. But before I started it, I actually saw an advert in a magazine here for somebody who'd go into their houses and cook for them, and I decided, that's quite a good idea, but I'm not going to do that because I've got to have to take food processors and food mixers and knives and all sorts of things, and then the people would talk to me while I was busy, and that would also lose my concentration. And fortunately for me, my dad had a very good friend who managed a complex of basically timeshare 60 villas not far from where I lived, and I went to him with the suggestion that I would supply an evening meal to the guests who stayed, and they were full 52 weeks of the year, so that was really good. And he approached the British company that owned it, and they said yes, I could do it. So we started off. I started off with a limited menu, and offered the idea to the people that they could buy in a meal, especially if they'd been out at the beach all day and they didn't really want to go out to a restaurant. that they had the opportunity to buy in. So that was how it started, but I was still baking cakes for this lady. And then my husband decided that every Monday night at this complex, they would have a barbecue braai for approximately 120 people. And on that night, we wouldn't get any orders. So he said he wanted to supply barbecue packs, braai packs, and salads. And so he inveigled me into helping him do that. And he used that as his business. And then he said, oh, nobody brings desserts or cakes.
So you were making the cakes, Terry was doing the braai packs, and I remember coming and helping you to go and deliver the food to the people, to go to the swimming pool there where all the people would sit around and Terry would do the braai and you would bring out the cakes and we would sell everything and all the money and come home and count it.
Exactly. And that went on for 15 years. So that really was my business. And I was very fortunate that I developed a network of people. A lot of the people that were there would come back year after year. So then we got, better known. And a lot of people would email me before they arrived and say, we want meals for this night, this night, this night. So it really became quite a busy business. Because if you can imagine, most of the villas had 4 to 6 people in. So and I made the decision very early on that I wasn't going to deliver one meal because it was not really economically sound. So it was always in units of 2. So it was 2, 4, 6, 8. So it went on for many years, and we survived, and we went to South Africa on it, and all sorts of things in between writing cookery books for Margaret.
Yes. So what we decided was that with the cookery school, we had all these recipes. We would help people out. We would write the recipes, and we would put the books together. And Vanessa, she checked everything. She tested them all, and they all completely flop proof. So that was really, really good. And we've now got a whole lot of books which are available at Hirsch's. And my latest one, which is vegan, because I wrote the first vegetarian one when I was vegetarian, and then when I went vegan, we wrote the vegan one. And so we go on, and it's a work in progress. It's not, a lot of people say it's something you can start and stop. You can't. It's something that goes on. And as Vanessa says, and I always tell everyone, it takes a long time. It took her 15 years. She had this business running for 15 years, made a good living from it, and it kept them busy. It kept them out and about, and they got to know people. But socially, to integrate into a new country is really, really difficult. And I love the women's networking and those type of things. But how did you build up your friends? Because you've got your friend Carmen, who also has a love of food, and who you've got on so well with all over the
So my friend Carmen was working for Marilyn, and Marilyn, we lived separately. I didn't know her, but then twice a year she'd get all of her bakers together and give us a lunch. And so I got to know Carmen, who lived not far from me, and because she also, although she's Portuguese, she lived in South Africa, lived in Vereniging, and I was in Vanderbilt Park, so we had some mutual tapes. And so we became really good friends, and obviously it's really helpful to also integrate into the Portuguese society. Having said that, though, most of my friends who are Portuguese are either from South Africa, from Angola, from Mozambique, and also because of the nature of my home here, that I rent out space, I've got to know quite a lot of other people, especially South Africans who are moving over here on a permanent visa, and they needed a rental agreement. So all those people that have stayed with me over time, they've become good friends. And I think also, as I said, the book club was very important to make friends. But to put yourself out there, you
invite people to your home a lot. You cook a lot. She has beautiful meals, and she invites people around. They all get to know each other, and that's how you build up your friendships when you go to a foreign country. Yeah. But now everything was going swimmingly, and your husband had been your husband for 50 years, and then he died. And girls, this is going to happen to most of us because mostly men die before us. And that's a very traumatic thing. It's the most traumatic thing that you can possibly go through. And here you were in a different country with friends around, no family, and you had to go through that whole thing yourself. Just to the girls out there who are going to go through it, who have been through it, how did you draw on your own inner strength to live through that difficult time?
Well, I think it had helped because my whole family had literally just been to visit. My daughter was actually here at the time with her 2 small girls. And so my husband had actually seen everybody in the last 3 weeks of his life. And when he died very suddenly, I was more concerned for the children. So I had to sort of put in a show of strength and go through the motions. And obviously you're in a foreign country, you don't really quite know. Well, I was fortunate that when my father died, I knew how that worked. I knew a bit about the system. And so when Terry was going through the motions of just trying to keep my head above water and trying to do all these things and be strong for my children. And while they were here, it was the summer, and I realized that I needed to do everything very quickly. I'd do a celebration for his life, and I was really blessed because when I put it out there, it was very fast. My son came back because he'd just been here and he came back for it. And I had 65 people, all friends, and just arrive with their chairs, sit out there, offer to bring food. And that did help me a lot to know that there was a lot of support out there. And I think the thing is, when everybody goes and all the attention is gone, that's a difficult part. That you've got to say to yourself, what am I going to do to keep myself sane, to keep myself busy? My husband was also most often at home when I was out and about. So for me, the big thing was actually to learn to take a front door key, because I was always worried I always knew he was be at home. And obviously then I had to make sure I wasn't locked out the house and things like that. So it became more practical as well, that do I understand how his car works? Not really, which I had to learn. So there was quite a lot of taking over from where he'd left off. And that did keep me busy. And I think you have to have the inner strength to draw on yourself and to say, you've just got to live your life, and you've still got a bit of life to live, and to take an interest in what's going on around you. Have some really good friends that you can call on that support you, and just know that you will survive, get through this, but it does take time.
No, it does. And you were lucky that you had the people here coming in and out, and people and friends and all the network that you built up, and that was so important to build up that network while everything's still going right, because you never know when the wheel's going to fall off, and you're going to need to draw on those people and bring them into the fold and help them to look after you. And I think the biggest thing here again is you've got to ask for help. Sometimes you have to just ask for help. So you're not used to doing it. It's not something that comes naturally, but you need to do it. So I think that's one of the things. Your children are both in England. You're here in Portugal. A lot of your friends in South Africa. It makes sense to go to England. So can you see yourself selling up here, going there? Would you buy somewhere there? How do you see yourself going forward? Because a lot of us are reaching the stage of our life where it's the last stage of your life, and you've got to plan it. Plan ahead and get it actually organized so that you are there and you're looked after and you feel safe and secure and that type of thing.
Yeah, I think for me, the big thing is that I live in a beautiful home, a lovely place, but it is very big. And I know I rent out and it's lovely, but it is very costly to maintain, obviously, because you've got to keep everything up to scratch if you are renting out. And so I am thinking of selling in approximately 3 years' time because of the tax implications, which gives me time to actually process what I really want to do. I think going to England right now wouldn't be a good option. I think to stay here and to buy a smaller apartment would probably be the right way to go. And then I'd be freer to actually commute backwards and forwards between the UK and here. My children have got busy lives. They're all working. Grandchildren are growing up. And so it would be silly I have got a lot of friends in England. I have a lot of family. And so I know I'm not going to be lonely. And again, I would go there and I would try and make a network. There's lots of different clubs you can go to. I must say as well, there's a WhatsApp group here, and there's a very good social media thing on Facebook for the area that my children live in, and they've all made friends, and they all have obviously met their parents who've come over and things like that. So I think socially, if you just put yourself out there, you can adapt. So I'm thinking that's what I want to do initially, is to have a small place here, go to England, and maybe buy something small.
So Vanessa, with all that you've been through, and the girls that are watching, they've been through a lot as well, but they don't know, you don't know what's coming ahead. If you had to give advice to younger women who are going through life, they're going to get married, they're going to have children, it's a whole story on its own. Then you have grandchildren. Well, first of all, you have in-law children, and then you have grandchildren, and to cope with that. But at the end of the day, you are just yourself. You are the most important one, and you have to look after you, because you can't pour from an empty cup. So how do you take care of yourself? I mean, I know that you have hair done, you have facials, you have your nails done. I mean, you've got to take care of that, but how do you take care of your inner self?
Well, I read a lot. I obviously take strength from my friends and my family who give me advice and who cherish and love me, and I think that's very important, that you've got a lot of love in your life and that you're kind, and I think that's very important. How do I take care of myself? I like to think I give more than I take, and that gives me pleasure. I think for myself, I know that I need to eat healthily. I do cook, obviously I cook for myself, but I have learned over the years as well, is not to cook very elaborate things, but to do something like a tray bake or something, and that could go in the oven, and that I make food for like 2 days or something or other, that I don't have to cook maybe the next day, but I can tweak it a bit and add something else and make it a bit different, or maybe skip a day and have it the next day. So I try to eat as healthily as possible. I try to engage with people and not stay alone at home and just look at four walls. I try to keep my mind active. I try to read a lot, go onto news, know what's happening in the world. Sometimes it's a bit scary, but there we are. And I think the most important thing is to, obviously if you've got an injury or you've got something to go and have it checked out, which I do, I'm very fortunate. I've got, good medical here that I'm able to access. And, just put yourself through that, which is not very easy. I mean, last year I had an emergency gallbladder operation, it was a year and a half ago. And, I knew it was happening. And I just said to my friend Carmen, I said, come and fetch me and take me to the hospital, because I know I'm not going to be able to come back. And I just knew when the doctor said to me, you're not going home tonight, you're having an operation. I said, okay, that's cool. And I just have to keep myself healthy. And I think the most thing is to keep yourself interested in the world, and not just it's very easy to sit and not see anybody, not do anything, not go anywhere. Very easy. So you've really got to put yourself out. And if you're not that kind of person, you've got to push yourself.
Yeah, I think take yourself out of your comfort zone. I mean, I do that all the time. I take myself completely out of my comfort zone. And I think that is where you grow. I think also being around other people, I always tell you girls, if you lift other women up, that's how you lift yourself up as well. And to always give more than you want to take, because sometimes it's just me, I, and you don't get anywhere in life like that. It's always what can I do to help you? How can I, what can I do to show you? And with us, it was teaching in the cookery school that we had, so much fun with that. And to have fun with what's going on, to be interested, you're on the internet a lot, you know exactly what's going on. You can talk about Russia and England and America and all sorts of things, and politics and religions and that type of thing. I think that's what it's all about, just to keep yourself on top of everything that's happening and going out there. So to the women who are sitting at home saying, oh, it's okay for them, they're going all over the world, it's not me, I'm just sitting at home, I'm just a little housewife. Girls, you can't do that. You've got to get yourself out there, because the day is going to come when your family's grown up, your husband has died or gone off or so whatever, and you are going to have that inner strength in yourself. So now's the time to start growing that inner strength. So just your parting shot to the girls out there, because we have the most amazing resilience inside of all of us. We have the most amazing courage, and I always say you've got to draw on your courage to be able to get up and go out there. What is your parting shot to the girls watching today?
Definitely put yourself out there, have faith in yourself, know that you are important. You are absolutely the one. And when you go out there, project yourself. You're not going to love everybody. Everybody's not going to love you. But it doesn't matter. As long as you find your person, 2 or 3 people. I mean, how many people can you be friends with? Maybe true friends, maybe 10. And your family, you know, immerse yourself in your family. I'll just say, get to know your grandchildren. And maybe it's a bit tricky. They grow up and they grow away from you, but they come back to you. And I think that's important as well, family.
I think your family is the most important thing. I've got a sign that says family is not the most important thing, it's everything. So definitely that. But I think friends are also important, and having good friends for many, many years, I think is also really, really important. And as you get older, girls, you've got to have women friends because you just need them and they need you. So I think that's what it's all about. And that's what this podcast is all about, to have friends, to make sure that you have friends, to have people that you can rely on and people who support you in those tough times. So Vanessa, thank you so much for being on my show today. It's been amazing.
Absolutely
and I've
amazing.
Loved having you on, and thank you so much for all your words of wisdom. And to all the girls out there, send me some comments, and remember, if you like this podcast, follow and subscribe, and I'm going to have another exciting guest for you next week. Thank you so much.